Lab number 263. Now it's time to create our first adapter and to grab the data using the adapter as a service proxy, let's say, because it will actually call this mock server and get the data. But this time the data will go through adapter and then to mobile application. So for that we can open the new terminal tab and navigate to our root folder for this project and just type MFP dev adapter create. So we will start with adapter name. Let's call it employee adapter, something like that. And we will go and start with JavaScript adapter. That will be HTTP adapter. Group ID can be something like com adapters, and that's it. So in this adapter we will call the service for rating tab, which is actually accessible through the local host and then 4567 and then employees, just like that. So this is the endpoint that we are going to call with that adapter. Let's take a look on that adapter code. So because this is the Maven project, we have the POM.xml that is responsible for building that adapter, and it's also responsible for deploying that one if in case you will use the deploy using command line interface. So you will need to provide the proper URL and so on. Then the next step is to explore the adapter XML file, which has the config for our adapter, meaning the protocol, port, and domain that we need to change, because the protocol will be HTTP in our case, domain will be the local host, and the port will be 4567, and we will have just one procedure. Let's call it like get employee or just get rating. It will be easier, because that page actually displays the rating and we don't need anything else. So just save this XML file and let's go to the last file, which is the implementation. So here we can clean up the file and just remain one function, which was getFeed previously, and now it will be getRating, just as we declared here. So we don't expect any input parameters, and we just need to specify the path that we are going to call. In our case, it's just employees, and we expect JSON in return, and everything that we will return back to this function call. Basically, that's all. We can just type MFP dev adapter build, but of course we need to navigate to that folder first, and then adapter build. And now adapter deploy. So this adapter will be deployed to our server, and we should be able to see it in operations console. So let's just refresh that page. And you can see that we have our employee adapter down there. There are some properties that we can reconfigure, for example, domain, port, or protocol. There are some default ones, so like connections, timeout, and everything that we specified in that XML file. There is also resources tab, and you can see that by default we have endpoint get rating that is secured with the default scope. Default scope means that we cannot just go to that URL and call it using, for example, a browser or something like that, because we need to have a MobileFirst Platform API. We need to get the token before we will be able to get the data secured by that scope. To get the token, there is the way to overcome that API stuff using the confidential client that can be configured in runtime settings. So it works in a way like we are going to authorization manager and saying, hey, this is the test client's ID that we are going to use. This is the secret, which can call also the password. We can call it that way, but yeah, the name is the secret. And this is the scope that we are going to work with. Please give us a token. So based on those combinations, we receive the token that now can allow us to call that specific URL if we specify the scope correctly and if client matches the secret. So in our case, scope 2 stars means that we can access everything, and the secret is test. So that is available only on dev server. On production, you shouldn't use anything like that, of course. And this is by default enabled on a dev server. So what we can do is we can also use built-in Swagger to test that adapter. And to do that, we need to press this button and say that we want to authorize ourselves on default scope. We can provide test as the username and password or secret. Then we can once again click this button and try out this call. You can see that this call is working. So in case we don't have this authorization, we will receive unauthorized. So as I said, this call will be able to succeed only if we have the proper token. So this is the token that was added after our authorization. So now let's try to make some additional configuration for our adapter. I'm interested in modifying this path because tomorrow maybe API will change and we already can change by default the domain and the port that was provided here and some connectivity properties, but we cannot change for now the endpoint URL. So let's change that URL. To do that, we can define a property. So it looks like this property. You just need to type the name. Let's say the name will be endpoint. Then you can provide display name. This is the way how it will be displayed. So let's go with endpoint, but just with the uppercase. And finally, we can provide default value, which will be the default for this endpoint. So we will go with employees, just like that. Do not forget to close this, of course. So now we can go to our JavaScript and take that value from the property. So to do that, we will define one more variable, something like endpoint variable, and then we can use basically the server-side API, which is the MFP server, and that gets property value. And inside we just need to provide the name of that property. In our case, it's endpoint. And we will pass it here instead of our default pass. Just like that. Now we can save this and one more time go and build and afterwards deploy our adapter. Okay, so let's take a look. So now in our console and configuration tab, we should have, after refresh of course, additional parameters, which in this case is employees endpoint. So if we will refresh the Swagger page and try to call this endpoint, we still should be able to perform a call to our employees. And once we will change that, for example, to news, because that is one more endpoint that we are calling when we are going to the news page. Let's try to return the news here. So you see that we can apply the configuration changes in real time. And let's try out that one now. And now we are seeing response from a news. So we dynamically changing those endpoints, which is really cool. So let's move it back to employees. Okay, So we finished our tests with this JavaScript adapter. Let's try to do similar things for news endpoint, but with Java adapter. Basically, everything that we are doing here, you can read about in our tutorials. So just click on tutorials bookmark. For example, for adapters, you can navigate to Java adapter session and then take a look on Java HTTP adapter. And this article, this tutorial basically explains how it works, what it's doing, and so on. And we will use that sample that performs a call to MobileFirst Platform IBM Cloud and take in the RSS feed and modify it to take our news from the news endpoint. So there is also a link in each of dev tutorials to the specific projects that you can basically follow and download that adapter. So you can either clone that repository, or if you want to do it quicker, you just can download zip file, for example. It will be a bit easier. So next thing what we will do is to navigate to our downloads folder and unzip our just recently downloaded file. Archive, which is the adapter's release 80 zip. Now we can navigate to that folder and copy recursively our Java HTTP adapter that we are interested in to our home IBM dev workspaces IM folder, and we can navigate there also. So let's take a look on that Java adapter code. So basically we also have POM XML. We have almost the same structure with adapter XML, but this time it doesn't have any information about our endpoints or something like that. Everything is within the code. You can set up those custom properties the same way as we did with JavaScript to, for example, specify the different URLs and domains or whatever you want to take there. And then you have the configuration API to work with those properties. What we will do here, we will change the display name. Let's call it something like news Java adapter, for example. This will be a display name, and let's have the same description down there. Save this XML file, and let's go to our Java HTTP resource file. So what's happening here is basically, as I already stated, we are trying to connect to MobileFirst Platform IBM Cloud.com, which we will need to replace with localhost, port 4567, and protocol will be HTTP. What we are trying to get from there is the response from XML feed by default, and that is of course RSS feed, given the response in XML format. Because we are doing it with the JSON and we have only one option, we will remove this if-else construction, leaving just one execute, providing the direct endpoint going to news. And we don't need any params coming in. So in the initial example, there was a query param tag that was used to construct the endpoint, and we don't need that. So next step will be to rename this RSS response to something more feasible to us. So let's rename it to, for example, JSON response. Like that. And finally, the last thing that we need to modify is this transformation. So in the initial example, there was a transformation from XML that was coming from the RSS feed to JSON. And because we already have JSON, we just don't need it, and we will use JSON object to work with that JSON. So let's define here JSON objects. Let's call it something like results, and what we will do, we will just parse the content, JSON object parse of that body that we can get by taking get entity get content. like that. And now what we need to do finally, because we're expecting string, is to do result to string. That's it. The only thing that remains is just the import for our JSON object. So somewhere here, just type import com IBM JSON Java JSON object, like that, and save this file. Basically, that's all. We can now build this adapter and deploy it. Yeah, of course, to string, that is function. Just like that. So because we were already doing deployment through the command line interface, let's this time try to perform the deployment using the graphical interface. So the idea is that we just need to select one of the actions, deploy adapter, and provide the direct path to the file. So our file located inside workspaces, IAM, then the name of our project, in our case is Java HTTP, and then inside target folder there will be a Java HTTP.adapter. So this is what we need to provide. Just click deploy and that adapter will be deployed. So you can see that there is the resource, again secured with the default scope, and again we can preview it in Swagger. And after authorizing ourselves on default scope, we should be able to get a response with news, just as we did. Basically, we finished with the adapters on the server side. Now we just need to implement those calls on the client side using MobileFirst Platform API. So, regarding our client side, let's take a look on the way how the calls are implemented now. So I will close all other files that we already modified, and we will navigate to providers and start with employee provider. So this provider gets called when we are going to the ratings page, and for now it uses the HTTP client to perform HTTP get to that localhost 4567 employees, and everything that is returned to our server. So as you remember, we're doing this call through the adapter, and we just need to provide everything that is within that result. So to perform that, we need to use MobileFirst Platform API. So instead of doing this get and so on, we can just implement the call a bit differently. First, let's define some local variable using let. So this is malloc of var but works locally, while var with Angular 2 works like a global one. So let's call it something like data request. And here we will use Worklight API. You see that you have auto-completion, and we are interested in WLResourceRequest. So with the auto-completion, you can see that we need to provide the URL that we are going to call, and in our case, the URL will be adapters, and then the name of our adapter, it's employee adapter, and then the name of endpoint, which is get rating. So this is what we are calling, adapters, employee adapter, get rating. Everything else will be put it there automatically during the call, so you don't need to bother about that. So this was our URL. Then we need to specify the method using again WLResourceRequest.method. Let's go with get, for example. And basically that's all. Afterwards we can set query parameters if you need, form parameters, headers, whatever we need, or we can just say something like data request send to perform the execution of this request. And it's good practice to have a callback with the handling response. So we will have two options, either it will be success, either failure, as always. So in case our response will be failure, for example, we will just do some kind of logging, something like failed to load data, and providing that failure. And in case everything will be successful, we will just have here also login, but this time something like data loaded from adapter. And here we will put success or response. Yeah, we call it response. And we will assign the value of our response to this data, that variable that we will need to resolve in our promise. So it will be response. Then in case it's the JavaScript adapter and we are working with the JSON, we will have here response JSON structure dot results, as you remember. And finally, we will do resolve this data. And in case it will fail, we will resolve the error. Something like this. So now let's take a look on our application after reload. You can see that there are some issues during the load. In the gulp you can see what's wrong, and basically the reason why it's not working is because gulp has no clue about our MFP API. That's why it cannot build actually or compile the code and place it in build folder. So by default, in the real app, if you somehow can compile, it will work. But during the compilation, you need to have those reference to typings. Otherwise, within usage of TypeScript, you won't be able to have those APIs working. So we have our tsconfig file, which actually looks for all files in TS, but this tsconfig has nothing to do with gulp watch task, unfortunately. This is the global project tsconfig. And watch task by default is looking on the file called main.dts down here in our typings folder, which again has no clue about MFP typings. So what we can do is to copy here our reference files, meaning make a reference to our typing files, and those are located inside plugins. For example, Cordova plugin MFP has a typings folder, and there is the worklight DTS file that you can copy paste from and put it here. And what you just need to do is you just need to go one level up and say that yes, this will be the Cordova plugin MFP typings worklight DTS. Then we will go to JSON store, and it also has the typings folder. This will be our second file. And again, one level up. And finally, we will go to push and copy it from there. Now we can save this main DTS, and you can see that we have no errors anymore, and our application starts loading. So let's take a look on rating tab. So we have our data loaded. There is an issue with lookup loader, but it's fine during the preview. It will work in the real application, I mean in emulator, in Android and so on. So we can ignore that for now. And basically we got our data from adapter, and it's loaded and it's also displayed on screen. So everything works as expected. And our idea is that the same should be done for the Java adapter. So we can copy that construction that we used inside the promise and open the news provider. So inside news provider we have the same thing. We have this HTTP get that will be replaced with our Java HTTP adapter. And we don't have there any specific endpoint, it's just the Java HTTP adapter and that's all. As you remember, it is somewhere here. Yeah, so this is the URL that we are going to call. It's also expecting us to perform the get call, and everything that we will return we will place, but this time it's inside news and not inside the results. Just like that. And by the way, we can clean all dependencies to HTTP and map. And the same can be done inside our employee provider. Like that. Okay, so let's take a look on our news. So we have news loaded, everything works fine. As I said, local uploader can be ignored for now. We have our rating working as expected. So basically that's all for this lab. We will add some security next one, but on this step, current lab is finished. Thank you.